Chris Brogan.
And we're going to be talking about community today, how to build a community and why you want to build a community. And we're going to start. Did you want to start with your video?
Sure. Who all went to the fine session by Mitch Joel in the other room? Oh man, good. I'm glad I had a backup because that bastard took my plan.
Wow.
You showed that free hugs video, right? Rat bastard. So I'm going to beat him because my plan on the community notion. Here's a dude in Korea doing the same thing the guy did in Sydney. But does Mitch know the story that this happened? The hug guy was doing this all on his own. He was out in Sydney in a shopping mall doing this 1 day a week. And all he was doing was walking around the side and said free hugs like my shirt. I've only had 3 hugs today, by the way. But that is the point of this video. People don't hug because they're afraid of each other. Social communities are afraid of each other. We all want to know each other. We're so afraid of making the first basic step. Hugging each other. Right? Getting to know each other. Shaking hands. Meeting people. So this thing rocks. Look at this Korean dude recreating the whole thing again for someone else, right? So, by the way, if you scroll the side of this thing, if you start looking around for this video, there's tons of people shooting this video. There's people in Russia, there's people in Czechoslovakia, and all kinds of places doing the same thing because they thought it was a cool idea. Did Mitch show you how many downloads that dude had? Who in the room wishes they had 10,844,000 downloads of their one piece of media? That's community. Why does it work? Every time I post this on my blog, I can post this once a week on my blog and I get 5 blog posts back to me saying, Chris Brogan showed this cool video I love. Because it's basic humanity.
So nobody do that.
Don't do that. So anyway, I'm going to shut this off and let the boys go into their part of the session. But I wanted to start with that because to me, this is the power of what community gets done, is getting people connected and getting people excited about being friends with each other. But these guys actually wrote some stuff to talk about, and they're ready to get into a big presentation because these guys are the community in Canada. These guys, through Canada Podcast Buffet and all the other stuff they're doing to bring a portal of people together, if you're not linked into the Canada Podcast Buffet site, then you probably don't know each other yet. So these guys are the rock stars who made that happen up here.
Oh.
So, thanks for coming. Have a good day.
I learned so much.
Give each other hugs. Yeah. We don't have slides to show. We're just we put our notes up here.
I want to play the other one.
Who's not a geek?
Well, our first slide was why. Why do you want to be part of a community? I think Chris kind of touched on that a little bit. Does anybody else have ideas about why you want to be part of a community?
Yeah, why are you here?
Yeah.
Boredom.
Good.
Yeah?
As an educator of teenagers, I see it as building self-esteem.
Good.
I'm afraid I've eaten the dog food that you guys have been talking about. I signed on to be one of the bloggers for the podcast, and it was because several people have already walked up to me and said, "Hey, duct tape guy, Sean!" I came in a known commodity, and I think that's part of what.
Yeah.
I think there's a bit of a narcissistic aspect to it. Like if you think you're so brilliant and you know so many things and you want to share it with as many people as possible.
Who feels that way? I do. Totally. But who also equally doesn't love themselves? Who also has the self-esteem issue that goes along with it?
Self-loathing.
It's also about having a structure in place. If you care about some really obscure, arcane, whatever, and you have a community built around it, it's easier to keep than if you have to go back out every single time and find people who also care about that.
It's really strength in numbers, isn't it? Right? It's all about we you know, when you think about it as podcasters or future podcasters, you know, we all, you know, there's a community that's a great line goes, we all think we're so special, but we all go home and do the same fucking thing. And the more you share that with people, the more you will have confidence in what you're doing. The more you will be able to share experiences, maybe live off somebody else's mistakes, shares.
And And we're going to play music and run around that chair.
We're going to do a little soft shoot for you now.
Sit
No, that's fine.
Okay.
And to tie in with what everybody's been talking about so far, it helps build your brand, doesn't it? If you're part of a community and you're just participating on a forum online, or you're at a conference like this and you ask a few questions or you answer a few things, people start knowing. You know, I didn't know who Jay Moona from Uncle Seth was until Podcasters Across Borders. And I knew him at first as the guy who has a question about everything. And a long question. But
And a lot of answers.
and then I met, but you know, that was his. That was how we connected because of that. Then I got to know he was a musician, then I got to know him as a friend and as a podcaster.
And we can't get rid of him.
And it just it builds. It builds. It's a nice thing that you build it.
I just think it has a lot to do with fueling this community, because the bigger it gets, the more power we have as individuals, and we're not reliant on big companies and stuff to allow us to choose from the choices they give.
Well, look at,
No, I'm laughing at your comment about not relying on a big company.
Yeah, no, Oh, shoot.
Like this,
One more thing.
With certain exceptions.
No.
the Mitch just showed a great video, and I don't know how many people were actually in the session. Mitch showed a great video of the guy showing how he picked the kryptonite lock. Right? And then there's that whole community that comes out of that too, and then you're talking about derailing corporate interests, and that's where
I just want to say, in a community, what I love about it is that we learn from each other. What I love about my job is that on a daily basis, I teach all day long. I walk away, I learn as much as I taught every single day. Just from face-to-face meetings, talking about it, getting it done. Every day I learn as much as I teach.
And the beautiful thing about what we use for technology is there is no gatekeeper. You don't have to convince CBC that you should be on their show. You don't have to get on Much Music if you've got a cool idea for your own radio show. You are your own television tuner. Cameras are cheap, bandwidth is cheap or free, and yes, we can have the conversation about underprivileged later. But there's all this technology that is so inexpensive to make you just as important a brand as the other people out there. I don't have regular TV in my house. I have a set to watch video movies, but I watch and listen to you guys. You guys are my rock stars. Okay? So I come to these things and I'm like, hey, do you guys watch the puppet show? It's so awesome. And everyone's like, what? You know, everyone's conversations talk about Lost or Heroes or 24 or On the Water Cooler, but I talk about your shows because it's what matters to me. When I talk about a cool episode of Canadian Podcast Buffet, I forget not everyone's listening to that show besides me. So like, did you hear when Roger did that funny line and Mark had to laugh and it was so, and then everyone's like, but in this community we can find each other and make really neat things happen, because you know there are people in this audience today who have a puppet show. There are people in this audience today who talk about farm life. There are people in this audience today who maybe have 12 listeners, but they're the right 12 listeners, right? Or viewers on the video.
And actually, what's really interesting is how I met Chris, because I can't even remember how we ended up speaking on the phone.
We were drinking and...
No, this is before PodCamp Boston.
The police said the file should stay closed.
Before PodCamp Boston, through some sequence of events, I ended up on the phone with Chris, and I didn't know who Chris was, and Chris wasn't sure who I was. And then halfway through the conversation, he goes, wait, are you the Podcasters Across Borders dude? And he knew all about Bob and I already, so it was amazing. And so you don't even know where your community is going to go when it exists.
Linda Mills, a question about the community though. That's really well put, but are you talking about the community inside the circle or the community outside your circle? And I think you have to really sort of figure out what your definitions are here so that those of us who aren't podcasters will feel a little bit more comfortable about what's going on. And I think I personally, I'd like to see a little bit more outside showing people how to do things.
Well, for me, a community, right? I can't define what it is, right? Everybody has their own community, and you're joined by interests or by listening to the same shows or watching the same movies. I can't say that it's the community's job to do that, for me personally, because the community is there, and it's all online, it's all accessible. Anybody has a question, you know, Google, podcast, poof, you're going to hit a community, and that's how you plug in. But if you do that and you just passively read it and you stop there, you've observed the community. Get in there, ask a question. What stupid question's been asked before? Yes, it has. Fine, go. And then you're in part of the community too.
Okay, but my point is that the reason you got so many downloads on that video is that YouTube puts the big arrow there. And you can click it and see it.
But there's like 200 million things to watch on YouTube, so he got a big download because somebody knew how to promote that and get it out to people. And the very nature of what he was doing, that guy in the mall in Sydney was hugging people.
Well, it's viral too, right? So one person sees it and tells another, like there were a whole bunch of people in that room, the presentation was before this, that hadn't seen some of the videos. And I'll bet you now they're already blogging about it, and so now there's going to be a whole other group of people who are now going to see the videos. And so just there's what ends up happening is you have enmeshed communities. You have one little community here, one community here, and there's another community between the two that somehow links them, and then they all just keep branching out.
Bridges is the answer to that. I'm sorry, gentleman in the back, your first name?
Rick.
Hi, Rick.
Hi. Just addressing that point about there being sort of inside and outside. It's like there's levels of engagement that any individual who's part of the community will have with that community. So, if you're just sort of on the periphery observing it, then yeah, you are kind of on the outside. But as you find your place in that community, you may find that you are engaging more and moving to a different point within that space in the community. Or you may find that community not for you, but this other one that bridges to it is actually more what you're looking for.
Absolutely. And your first name?
Gillian,
Hi.
I think what you just said about not watching network television and having your own media is really, really important in the sense, to me, all of this is about empowerment. It's about the networks not telling us what we can and can't watch. It's about us going out there and getting the content we want, the broadcast, the discussion, the relationships, the whole media. And I think that's a really important concept in the sense of broadcast today, because it's concentrated in so few hands.
Completely. I want to point out one of Mark's podcasts to this point. Mark comes down rocking his podcast Across Borders thing with Bob, and Mark comes down with his really cool rock star music podcast. Do you know what everyone wanted to talk to him about? What's your other podcast?
No, just one more book.
Just one more book, a show about reading children's books. He got such viral connectivity with humans down at PodCamp Boston.
Nobody cared about my other
No one
stuff.
gave a rat's ass about his music or nothing. It was kids' books, right?
We had bookmarks printed up, and for just one more book for the podcast to promote it, because business cards weren't working because everybody expects something, or they think you expect something from them as soon as you hand a business card. Oh, you want to do business with me? So we had bookmarks, and I squeezed on the other side the electric sky, hoping that somebody would flip over the business card and go, oh, yeah, that show too. What I wanted to point out is in one of the things that we all struggle with, I think, in podcasting, is everybody's so excited about the technology, and they think about the technology being a problem solver and derailing big business and all that. I think it's more primal when you think about community. It's a little bit more primal than that, because we're social animals and we all have a need to feel together and feel connected. And when we're excited about something, baseball fans, they all huddle together and they share statistical information, because that's what baseball fans do. And so I think that there's that connection that people are looking for, that other people who are like-minded to connect.
We got asked when we did put on Podcasters Across Borders last year. We were interviewed a few times, radio and newspapers, and one question that came up a few times was, "How did you guys build this community?" I was like, well, we didn't. We made a spot where people could land. Is really what we did, and then we encouraged people. All right, everybody point to the same spot, and then we'll see if it works. And that's what it ended up happening. We didn't build the community. Canadian Podcasters built the community. So we're just kind of like there, and here's a chair for you, and here's a chair for you, and that's what it is. We're talking before about participating inside and outside. We're still, I think, used to the idea of being broadcast at, right, radio, TV, etc. And that's going away. That's going away. It's all a conversation now. So if you want to be in the community and you want to get the most out of the community, you got to give into the community to get something out. And giving, how do I start a podcast? You start that on a forum. You're going to get a few idiots who are going to say, oh, it's easy to find that information. But somebody is going to Google, how do I start a podcast? And because you asked the question, they'll find their answer. And the community just went up a notch. And that happens over and over and over and over again.
Jamie's got something. He's itching.
I'm sorry, just a little out of the loop. What would help for me to just place a reference here is what did you guys start and what has happened? What was the goal? And I'm just unaware of what the Canadian Borders thing has.
Well, what happened is that what happens is with the Canadian podcast scene was still young, but it was younger, and
he was an infant before.
And the Canadian thing is always about being in the shadow of the elephant, you know.
Hey, I'm trying to lose weight.
90 kilometers to the south, right? So it's like, how do you do something and have it be Canadian without having it be anti-American or whatever? How do you do that? And how do you assert yourself when there's such a powerful, you know, Canadian TV networks have that problem, you know? How do you be yourself when everything gets pumped in from Hollywood anyways?
And there were little pockets of activity going on that were kind of operating independently.
Yeah, and so what we did is, well, like everybody was, at that point, was listening to Daily Source Code, which was, you know, Adam Curry's thing, which was, you know, still a big part of podcasting back then. And Mark and I met at a meetup, which was a new thing for podcasting. There was a podcast meetup. And I said, you know what, it'd be really cool if we did something like that for Canada. A show about Canadian podcasters and Canadian podcasting. And that became The Buffet. And from that, you know, we said, hey, you know, it would be nice to have a meetup of listeners to The Buffet. We can do it in Kingston. We get maybe 10 people. We'll sit at a bar, have a few beers. It'd be great. Next thing we knew, we had 200 people there. Not because we did zero advertising, zero fundraising, zero anything. We just said, hey, here's a hotel and here's a conference room. Is that good? Yeah.
And
Sold
here's
out.
the people who are going to speak.
Yeah, and we sold out, and our jaws are like this. Okay, our meetup was supposed to be 10 people with beer, and it was a full-fledged conference.
Yeah. And with media all over it.
And now the people that met at our event, or through our sites or whatever, don't need us now to talk to each other. And that's the strength of the community. That's the charge I get, knowing, you know, knowing that Scarborough dude and Julian, we have something to do with them being friends, or doesn't need me now. Talk, be friends.
Well, and what happened when we started the Canadian Podcast Buffet, initially we decided the content was the community. We weren't going to editorialize. It was going to be strictly, we're going to find out from people what's going on where, and we're going to be like a current events thing. So here's what's going on. Somebody's pregnant. Meetup going on over here. New show just launched. Somebody's hitting 100 episodes. Here's a promo. I'll get you in a sec. Here's a promo from a podcast. Here's a profile from another one. And here's an independent pod-safe tune that you can use in your show. And that was it. And then it continued to grow and evolve. And finally, after Podcasters Across Borders, we realized that the community needed more than that. They wanted some more meat. They wanted us to give some more attention to technology and to some of the problems that were coming up. So then we started to actually get our own voice in there. But prior to that, we were just a mouthpiece to the community. And we still are a mouthpiece to the community. We still largely just relay information so that the people in Vancouver can also know what's going on in Halifax and just go to one place to find out. And so everything kind of filters through us right now.
Hi, I'm Mike the Birdman Dodd from This Week in Geek. It was actually kind of funny. My co-host here, Snowball, I found out we all go to Niagara College over in Niagara Falls there, and I found out he had a podcast, Snowballs PC. So I was kind of interested in that, and then I found out he was trying to start up a new show on our local radio station, which we're both working for now, This Week in Geek. And it was just kind of weird because I've realized that the podcasting community, like I work with a podcast, kind of, sort of. I work with Star Wars Action News as well. And Arnie and Marjorie, do you actually know them?
I don't, but I think it sounds like a fun show.
Oh, they're awesome. You would love them. They're really good people. So anyway, we're talking, and Snowball asked me, hey, do you want to be on my show? And I'm like, yeah, because I'm a bit of a Superman nerd. You think? You should see the tattoos. I'm not kidding. So anyway, yeah, he says, why don't we do this show? Then we're talking a couple weeks ago, like, hey, dude, why don't we put these episodes online? Right? Like, we'll podcast. And then we start talking last week, we're like, hey, why don't we offer some exclusive content? Right? And just our community has grown. We got listeners over in the UK now. We got Mexico. Right now, we're currently the highest rated show on our radio station. We just couldn't believe it because of the internet. We've actually grown so much larger than we ever thought.
Our first live show before we even really podcast, we crashed the internet streaming servers because there were so many people just tuning in, and they hadn't even heard not even a peep from us other than just saying that we just blurred ourselves out there.
Yeah, like they just knew us as Snowball and Birdman.
That's all we do.
And we're some of the more infamous students in our program.
There you go. Well, we have a vice principal in the audience, students.
You would have suspended me for the stuff.
Actually, it's a very relevant question to that lead-in. It seems very time-consuming and so exciting. Can you make a living at this, or is this just hobby?
Boy, that's a wide open question for a lot of other sessions.
A lot of sessions going on about that. I think that's.
Maybe I'll focus on the three of you. Is it?
I'll just give you my personal opinion because, and I please don't anybody take this as a slight to any future or past presentation about monetizing. It's not about making money podcasting. It's not podcasts you're trying to sell. It's you. So podcasting is one of the tools you have that lets you get out there and sell your knowledge, your personality, your ability to heal broken butterflies. Great. But, because everybody can create media, right? So don't concentrate on what makes you your media. That's what it is.
I guess just to make the point finer, I'm finding listening to podcasts is kind of just my sleep hours.
Welcome to our world. Yeah.
Is it more hobby than?
It's for me. It's predominantly hobby. Is there money to be made in podcasting? Sure. Am I doing it for the money? Did I start to do it for the money? No. I do it because I'm enjoying it and because I'm building communities. And there's people around the world, and well, Scarborough Dude is even closer, but there's people all around the world that I'm having dialogues with. And Chris, and there's people from the UK, and I'm getting emails from people, and they ask questions. And actually, we received an email from somebody from the UK about our conference just the other day, and they wanted to get
there is money to be made. I wouldn't say necessarily it's making your own show or selling your own show, but it might be helping companies or people do their own.
Doesn't it depend on the content of what, if you're talking about frivolous things that are just off the top of your head, or if there's more substance to it, then there's going to be a...
Ask a ninja, $300,000. $300,000 for a guy in a ninja costume to make jokes. Funniest damn show in the world, $300,000. Who could fall asleep to the idea of listening to a financial aid podcast? Have you guys met Christopher Penn yet? Christopher Penn is awesome. The dude made his company $20 million US, real dollars. I just wanted one Canada dig per session. $20 million real dollars on his podcast. He personally brought home some percentage of that. That dude makes way more money than me to do a podcast. So there is money to be made. I got my day job out of podcasting.
Well, at least a direction there, or a focus.
Yeah.
It depends what you want to do.
It definitely helps.
But
there are some shows that are just all over the place that are general interest that are amazingly popular.
There's this hip hop podcast I listen to that I don't really listen to the hip hop. In fact, I fast forward through the songs most times. I listen to every word the man says many times over, but I don't give a shit about the music. It's all about the person and the relationship and the responsibility. But that's the point Bob was started out with. Bob starts to, it's about bringing what you do, what you feel, what you are to a higher level. The thing I say, Mike on the floor is going to appreciate this one. I kicked off Podcast Boston by saying we're all superheroes. I've met so far big name people that I had no access to whatsoever through doing this stuff. And why? Because I like meeting people and getting to know them. I also meet homeless people doing this, and I have a good time with that. I meet people anywhere I go because I have something to come back to, which is a community of people. And one last thing before I let go again. There are ways to make community really useful, and that is to have the people who are in your audience and in your world interact with the stuff that you do. The best TV shows in the universe suck because there's no way for you to get on their show. But I've stood in front of the Rocket Boom map, and I took my picture. And you can contribute to the show with Zay Frank. Again, a show that talks about nothing in a very good way. Zay Frank's going on to a movie career based on talking about nothing. So you get your audience involved, and you suddenly get a hit. Jet Set does that.
Well, there's a perfect example, and one that's right here in this conference is Mitch Joel's 6 Pixels of Separation, because his show is almost entirely, now anyways, other people contributing to his show. He basically fires off a clip of an audio comment that somebody's made, either by phone or through one of his commenting services or on his through email, plays that or reads it, and then they'll talk about it for a bit. And then he'll play another comment. Oh, and that comment's commenting on the previous episode's comment by so-and-so. And suddenly you have 6 episodes later, I picked 6 randomly, but it actually worked quite nicely. And suddenly 6 episodes later, that conversation is still going, and there are people who are still contributing to it. And all Mitch is doing is firing clips. But you brought up the point of it taking an amazing amount of time. It does. And Bob, on the drive up yesterday, we were talking about our presentation, what we were going to say, because we really don't know anything about this. And he said, you have to give more than your show. So if you're building a community, it's essentially you're starting off with a podcast, and as a vehicle, as an invitation, as a place, or what do you say, a landing place, and from there you have to be involved. If you have people leaving comments on your website, you have to participate in those comments. If they're sending you email, respond to the email. If they're sending you audio comments, play them on the show, or if they're not meant for audio comment or for playing on the show, respond to them. If your community is extended beyond your own site, there might be forums or other places where people are talking about you. There's blog posts about the presentation you made or about an episode you did. Find those blog posts, do the vanity searches, and track what people are saying about you and jump in on the conversation there. It won't always happen where you are. Sometimes you have to go to it.
Actually, I've got something on a bit of a tangent about ways to make money doing all of this. If you're not into, say, aggregation, which if you're successful at it is probably the best way to make a crap pile of money, a huge pile of it, but you know, your chances of doing that are pretty slim. And you don't know what show you want to make, and you aren't really sure, or you're still in the throes of doing that. You also have to realize that podcasting is a skill right now. And there's a lot of people that don't know how to do it. And if you know the skills, if you know like the technical skills of how to do it, you can provide that service to people. And there's a hugely growing market of a need for what you know how to do right now. An example of that is a friend of mine who has a podcast in Montreal for Midnight Poutine, Jeremy Morris.
Now we're talking.
He has an audio podcast about music in Montreal, which is great, and I love listening to it. But he's also providing the service of preparing an audio podcast for the Montreal Gazette about the Habs, about the Montreal Canadiens. And he's getting paid to do that work. So, you know, and I have been, you know, I'm trying to figure out the show that I want to make. I'm really into the idea of serialized, you know, web video content. And I'm developing a couple of shows, and I don't really think I stand to make much money on those in the short term. In the long term, I would love to, but in the meantime, because I'd rather not do the kind of work I used to do, which is events, I'm essentially consulting to a couple of nonprofits right now about how to communicate to people using social media. So there's a way for you to focus on the stuff that you're passionate about and that you're interested in, and really make a career out of it right now, if you really, really focus on it. And you can stop, you know, like if this is the stuff that you're spending like every evening and every weekend thinking about, you can spend your daytimes thinking about it too.
Sure.
Well, I think passion is the key word, because, I mean, if you're passionate about something, you're willing to put the time in, you're not going to be worrying about making the money because you're doing it because you're passionate about it. I mean, I have a website on indie rock and roll. You know, I never thought about making money with it. Eventually, revenue came in that pays for the hosting and stuff. But that was never the idea behind writing about it. It was a creative outlet.
But also with that site, though, you became known yourself as a reference in terms of rock music. Right?
Yeah, and it's cool because you do build a community of people that are interested in music, and then the whole process, it kind of all evolves, and everybody feeds off everybody.
So you started by writing about rock music. What did you do? You built your personal brand, you built a community, and if somebody was going to...
now you've got something to sell.
Yeah. You know, there it is. It's tangible now.
Whitney Hoffman of the LB podcast.
Hi. Yeah, it's really all about interactivity, because again, you know, if I hadn't gone to Podcast Boston and started talking to Chris and leaving blog posts for him and having a conversation, you know, I wouldn't be doing work for him from time to time. And if I hadn't talked to Mark and had Andrea and him on my website, I wouldn't have found out recently that they know somebody at American University who works with somebody who I'm having on my podcast who's one of my personal heroes. So, I mean, it really is this 6 pixels of separation, but you're not broadcasting. My podcast may be a broadcast in some ways to people who are coming in interested in what I'm saying, but it's the interactivity that changes it.
Your narrow casting is a term.
Yeah, absolutely.
But casting, I have trouble with the word casting, just because casting implies you're casting something away, and that's it, and that's not what you're doing. Mm-hmm. You're saying, here I am, here's my message, and what's yours? And it's, you know,
if you don't have the interactivity, I mean, really, what's the difference?
Well, another thing that's really important, and this plays into the interactivity, is to make, and partly to borrow what Mitch said, which was, who are you? Figure out who you are, be real, and make friends, not just, how do we word that? I lost him. Don't just add friends, make friends. So it's not just about having, like on MySpace, having 1 million friends is, wow, okay, so the 1 million people have found your webpage and said, can you link to me? And you've accepted. But make friends. I mean, this is we're solving a primal need to connect using technology. And the way we used to do it is we actually used to go to people's houses and we'd drink beer until all hours of the night until the police got called. And you kind of have to have that mentality of I'm going to somebody's house to have a beer, and I'm going to hang out with them, and I'm going to chill, or I'm going to meet them for coffee. And it just, you're doing it online. But you have to have that mindset, because the instant you start to think of this being a technology problem that you're solving with technology, you're kind of missing that opportunity to interact and have community.
It's not just going there, it's also inviting people in.
Right.
I found as a parent, I sat with my 2 children below the age of 12 and listened to the SG show coming out of the Bay Area in California.
Good show.
And we shared experiences with another family somewhere else who we didn't meet. It was like inviting guests into my home and listening to that things that happen in their house that are the same that happen in mine.
I just have a question related to that sort of hands, because I like the hands. Does everyone have at least one show that you were like sickly passionate about and you love catching, and it's almost like unwrapping the chocolate and eating it? You guys have that one? Yeah. Well, I said English. Because then you get to be a freak and you have 700.
Of chocolates.
And you'll live.
Very good.
And to springboard upon that, I cannot describe the joy in my house the day that my daughter's voice feedback got played on Dr. Floyd.
Yes. That's another
6
thing.
years old.
Yeah. And kids get that too. They get that they haven't been on the radio, and for them, podcasting is radio. It's yeah.
Yeah, I knew I did a special day when my kids were humming podcast tunes and they were wandering through the house and they heard me on 101 for Baby Wipes and they said, Mom, that's you.
One thing, I'm Russell Hill, Rambles Russell, which was featured on Podcast Buffet. Thank you, gentlemen, for the little plug. I've actually gotten increased downloads because of that. My traffic is picking up, so thank you.
Nice. Oh, great.
When it comes to community, I've definitely noticed that. I've been doing this for almost a year in May. I started off doing it, contributing to other people. I got online, a little bit of a Doctor Who fan. We're all big geeks here. Let's all admit it. And I started contributing to other people's websites, Doctor Who one. And I became a guest. And I became a guest, and I thought, I can do this. I have a history of journalism, and I like to talk. When anybody doesn't like to talk, this podcasting, I don't know why you're doing it. And I started doing that, and I guested on somebody's show. They named an episode after my appearance. I used that as a springboard to make my own show. And I found it's the community. Some of the best podcasts, and these are talking to ones I'm talking about, they get 10,000 downloads a show because they respond to listener feedback. They read emails, they play audio clips, they've even had phone-in. I, because of that, got to speak with Colin Baker. Some people know the Sixth Doctor.
Yeah.
Because of that show, I got to have a live phone-in conversation with Colin Baker because of that show. I never would have had that chance without becoming involved with podcasting.
Is that worth more than a $50,000 a year job?
I don't know about that. That opportunity is, I think, what podcasting is about. It's opening doors that you would not have opened because of that.
Damn straight, Birdman.
There was a podcast I was listening to about Big Brother 6 a couple years ago, and I found out about one of the guest websites. So I started networking through there, and I became friends with one of the contestants from Big Brother. I ran his PR last summer, and I just couldn't believe the door had opened. Like, I'm friends with Howie Gordon, the lightsaber guy. Like, I couldn't believe that. It's so
And
cool.
that's one of the responsibilities you have, I think, as a podcaster, is you got to be open to using and letting your users interact with you. Don't just put it out there and you'll get emails, oh, it's nice, whatever, and then never mention it or never acknowledge it or whatever. It's social currency. You have to give it back and forth all the time.
Yeah, and it's cool when the community interacts back with you, because Howie Gordon came to my house to hang out.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then on Big Brother 7, he gave me a shout out on the air.
Nice.
And he mentioned my website and everything. I'm like, dude, I love you.
Justin?
When I talk to people in traditional media, I think that's what scares them the most. It's not the technology, it's the, okay, then the audience is going to talk to you, and you're going to listen and talk back to them.
Yeah.
That seems to be what freaks them out the most.
There was a Gazette article, Montreal Gazette article a couple weeks ago, somebody promoting their book on bloggers. And this guy had the opinion that bloggers were secluded, lonely people, yada, yada, yada.
Take a look here.
And so, yeah, okay, he's wrong, we know that, fine. But the problem I had with it wasn't, he's allowed his opinion. He's an idiot, but he's allowed his opinion. But the article is online. There's no feedback mechanism. There's no comments. There's no this. And that was my biggest problem with it is, hey, this is 2007. You can't yell at me and me not be able to yell back at you. And so I put that on my blog. And somebody said, well, no, there's letters to the editor. No. That's not one-to-one. It's got to be one-to-one.
Gentleman in the back. First name?
Hemi.
Hi, Hemi.
I'm a photo blogger, not a podcaster. But where is the overlap? Example, with this device, I can take a photograph, I can record a video, and an MP3. So over 2.5 years, I've tried to do that. Take a photograph, record a video, as well as the MP3. And I haven't been able to make it work. And I sort of defy categorization because do people then link to my RSS feed for my photographs, or the video, or the MP3?
Who are you trying to reach? Are you trying to reach people who like pictures, who like audio, or who like, both?
If somebody really likes, sorry to jump in. If somebody really likes what you do, but they only like one aspect of it, if you give it all to them, they'll forgive you, I think. That's my opinion. If there's something that, take for example, Julian Smith, who does it over your head. I'm sorry to give you away here, Chris.
Calling us sometimes.
Oh, let me finish the point then. And Chris just identified earlier that Chris doesn't care about the music. He wants to hear Julian speak. So he forgives Julian the music. He just fast forwards and skips over it. So I would hazard to say that if you put it all in one feed, if that's what you're looking for, the people who love your pictures but couldn't care about your movies, they won't watch the movies. They'll admire the pictures.
Okay, so if I can just wrap up, concluding with a question, or it's really a question. What is weak signal versus really focused? Because I might go cover a political event or a well-known celebrity event because I'm just there as an individual, rather than just, well, I'm interested in this squirrel and this tree and I'm going to park. And it's just a good view. So it's like throwing out a weak signal. This is what's interesting to me, rather than let me go cover something that would be interesting to many people, and because they can't be there, I'm there.
No, make it about you first. Make it about what interests you, because that's the only way you're going to write passionately about it.
And then we'll be interested in what you're interested in, because we start to use you as our filter to set that which is interesting.
We'll see the world through your eyes.
And the technology answer to your question, I'd say talk to our friends from Apple here, because I think there's a neat solution built into the iLife suite that would be useful to you. Really?
Yeah, I just want to say, although the session is officially over, you guys can continue as much as you want, but there's food downstairs for whenever. So.
Okay. Well, thanks.
So before you all leave, please scream like woohoo or something, so people downstairs think this was awesome.
That's a hockey yell right
At the good old hockey. I did the hands.